Shades of Benga Online presents highlights from the story of Kenya's popular music in the 70-year period between the end of the Second World War and 2016. The series draws its inspiration from the definitive book Shades of Benga by KETEBULMUSIC.
Good evening, viewer, and welcome to yet another episode of the Shades of Benga book online series. The book documents the history of Kenyan music from 1946 to 2016. On this episode, we shall be looking at the recording music industry in the pre-independence period. And to introduce us to the episode is the Nairobi City Ensemble playing Julieta by Isaiah Mwinamo. I will be your host, Lucy Ilado.
Julieta, Julieta, uko wapi? Julieta, Julieta, uko wapi? Tangu tuliachana nawe mwaka uliopita, uko wapi? Tangu tuliachana nawe mwaka uliopita, uko wapi? Kuwa mimi sijui kizungu, uliniacha kuwa mimi sijui kizungu, ukamfuata mwalimu wa kizungu, ukamfuata mwalimu wa kizungu. Kakufukuza tabia zako mbaya, yule mwalimu kakufukuza tabia zako mbaya. Julieta, Julieta, uko wapi? Julieta, Julieta, uko wapi?
On this episode, we are graced by very knowledgeable lady and gentlemen, and I will introduce them by order of seniority. Born in the 1930s is Mr. David Amunga. Welcome. He is one of the few survivors of the first generation of Kenyan pop musician, and he's the first African producer in Kenya and champion for the artistic rights in Kenya. Welcome. And right after is Mr. Tabu Osusa, a veteran music producer and the author of the Shades of Benga book. And last but not least is Dr. Njoki Wamai, born in the 1980s. Welcome. She's an assistant professor at the United States International University, Africa, where she teaches and researches on human rights, politics of Africa, African international relations, and development. On this episode, we'll tackle the music recording industry in the pre-independence period. And to start us off, Dr. Njoki might as well go ahead and give us an overview of the political scene during that period.
Thank you very much, Lucy. If maybe we could start just before the colonial occupation, because there is a notion that maybe we were tabula rasa, like nothing was happening before that. So the different communities and their music was ongoing. And of course, with their instruments accompanying their music, whether it's the Luyas, the Kikuyus, the Luos, everybody. And then in 1920, the colonial occupation happens, of course, soon after the railway line is complete. And so in the 1920s, even we had the first election, but for the colony, the British people only that were were in the colonies, so like in Kenya. And between the 1920s and 1957, when we have the first election where the African populations are involved, and you remember the Ledge Corps, where people like Moi were elected, and Eliud Mathu, and many others that I think even Odinga came in then. We had all these African elections. So between the 1920 and 1957 is a period, of course, a lot of distress, because we were enjoying ourselves, of course, going about our lives, and our land has been occupied, and now we are subject to a colony.
It's interesting that you've taken us back, because we previously talked about the musicians from Eastlands, and most of them sort of emerged because of the social halls, because the social halls were used as a gathering and they would go and perform. I'm very much interested in finding out from Amunga, did you perform in any of those social halls?
Right. Firstly, colonialists found out that they could not be able to colonize us before changing our social-cultural status. Before that, every tribe had its own music. Luos had Ohangala, Kambanane, and all this. So what brought me to be sensitive about music is when I was at school during history and civics. We were being taught how civilization came into Kenya. And I asked one thing, because the song God Save Our Gracious Queen was a British national anthem. And I remember it brought a problem to me when I raised and said, how come this song is a British national anthem and Kikuyus had started a war for independence?
Like Muthoni Nyanjiro was killed right at the police station as they went to agitate for the release of Harry Thuku. So there was political unrest. There was also organizing. So Africans in the city, in Nairobi City, started organizing politically, so through political associations to challenge the colonial occupation. And so around that time, there's a lot of angst, and because of the repression that the colonial occupation brought. And so, of course, around 1957, 1952, the emergency happens. The state of emergency is declared in Nairobi, and the Mau Mau, or the Land and Freedom Army, as it should be called, or popularly known as the Mau Mau guerrilla war, starts in 1952. And of course, between 1952 and around the late 1950s, around 1958, there's a state of emergency. And so that is very interesting, and I would really want to hear what Mzee Amunga will say, because around then it's when everybody is kicked out, not everybody, especially Kikuyus are kicked out of the city. And also there's a lot of repression in the city. Remember, the city, Nairobi, was quite an apartheid city. Africans stayed in Eastlands, Westlands, and all these other areas were for white people, and Indians, of course, in Isli and Pangani. So also organizing and protest music starts. And also, so protest music around the repression. And I think I will stop at that, because independence comes in 1960. People start forming political parties, or rather more national political parties are formed beyond. So KAU now moves to KADU and KANU. And of course, independence comes in 1963, and the mood changes.
The first Western instrument to come in Kenya, and people started changing from that, from traditional sounds to secular sounds with played by accordion. And I want to believe that in every community there was an expert of accordion player in Kikuyu land, in Luhya land, in Luo land, and all these places. So the guitar itself came after the Second World War, and my elder brother was among the people who went to, and they came back with guitars.
I want to take you a little bit back,
Yes.
of course, because I want to find the connection between you and Fundi Konde and the.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. In the music industry, of course, the Kenya music industry had started. Investors had come in to invest. So Fundi Konde was one of the artists, our early artists. I think Paul Mwachupa could be a bit ahead of him, or they were the same age. I was playing in Shaurmoyo, entertaining people. And he was one of my fans. I didn't know. And when I went for a break, he followed me and said, "My name is Fundi Konde. I work for Jambo Records. And I realized that you are a good artist. I want you to come to my office and take you to the company which can be able to record your song." I realized that something is changing from what I normally do. I went with a friend, Ben Blasters of Blawayo. We did a test and he said, "We are recording you." Ben Blasters was a songwriter,
Okay.
but in Luo. Just like me, he served as an untrained teacher. And that's why it was very easy for him to work with me artistically. When I came up, because we had rehearsed with him at Maringo was still very new, G8, nilikuwa nimemfundisha hiyo someni vijana. And he caught up faster than the Luhya man I was trying to teach. Tulikuwa watoto, tulicheza na masomo, kazi ya watoto, kweli kila siku ni kucheza. And the white man said, "I think these boys are good." And we recorded that song. And when it played over the radio, the whole country stood up for us.
Again.
And I'm happy that the Ministry of Education took that song to promote their educational activities. So Peter Colmo, using Fundi Konde, he found out that we could play that one guitar better than the Zaidi ones. So Fundi Konde, when he took me to Jambo Records, it was East African Industries, the factory, which was part of the
label.
Yeah, of the level. We were given a contract on the Jambo Records, where there was a studio, and we maintained our contract very well. We became popular in our own right. Then we went to see Mboya again, because Mboya wanted to take both of us to America for further studies, because Standard 8 those days was quite a high school class level. But then Ben did better than me, and he was chosen to go to United States, and I remained, and that's why I took Matthias Mlamba at Taita to team up with to continue with that contract. And this is why I became the first artist. We were being called artists and repertoire managers because you are supposed to know the production side of the artist, marketing aspect. So I would say that at that time I was the first artist to start production.
I'm just curious also to know at that time, what made you, what inspired you first to think of those songs? And also the other point before you, maybe you tell us about that, about the dominance of Luyas in the music scene in Nairobi. I would also maybe say that because Kikuyus were living already around Nairobi, you know, there were Ganagos in Mushadha and Dage Kobe. I think they were all in Muranga, which had a proximity to Nairobi. So you see, they did not probably see the need to come and perform in the Kaloleni social halls because they already maybe felt
had an audience.
They had an audience and quite near
I will make you laugh.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to our historical factors, Kikuyus were not popular to the British people here.
Of course.
They were looked at as rebels.
Yeah.
So they could not have a chance to promote whatever they had in terms of culture, cultural aspect.
In the city.
So the workers for the British were us, Luyas, Luos, and Kamba. Of course, you can hear the Kamba music is developing. Yeah. So I would say that it also centered on the relationship between us and the British who are still ruling.
Yeah, that's.
And now the Nairobi City Ensemble is back to perform Pole Musa by Daudi Kabaka.
Musa nimevumilia sana, Musa nimevumilia sana, kupigwa kama mimi punda, na sura yangu imeharibika, na ngumi zako za kila siku Musa. Tabu kweli Musa, uliponioa sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. Nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirige. Kweli Musa, uliponioa sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. Nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirige. Tafadhali Musa, tafuta bibi atakayeweza kuvumilia hizo tabia zako. Ukinywa pombe wa munywia yeye, ukinywa munyeke wa munywia yeye. Pole kweli Musa, uliponioa sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirige. Nilimusa uliponioa, sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. Nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirige.
Well, it's very obvious that you've had an interesting career, and we're very honored that you're able to join us. But we're headed towards the end of the pioneer chapter in the book, and we have come to discover that Fundi Konde was the pioneer of popular music in Kenya. Mr. Osusa, perhaps you'd love to answer this one. Which female musician deserves the title of female pioneer of popular music in Kenya?
Oh, thanks, Lucy. I think that's a very good question. I mean, if we are all in agreement that Fundi Konde was the father of popular Kenyan music, then I think it goes without saying that Esther John was the godmother, because from the early 50s, mid-50s actually, when Fundi Konde was recording, mostly the female voice in those recordings was Esther John, and the clarinet was always played by Ben Nicholas, and sometimes they also worked with Daniel Gatuga. In fact, so I believe that for the title or position of godmother, I would definitely give it to Esther John, because I know there were other ladies, like I remember today we were talking earlier with Mwalimu James Onyango Joel, and we were talking about a lady called Eda Ibrahim, I think that's the name, and then there was also another lady called Sheila Monroe. But you see, when we always talk about titles like godfather or godmother, we rely mostly on who first recorded what. Because I'm sure there are other people, like Muzam Munga was saying that Paul Mwachupa was older than Fundi Konde. Yet Fundi Konde is given the credit as the father because I think he recorded earlier. So that's how we go by. And okay. I've been really doing my research, and I've not seen any lady that has recorded earlier than Esther John. So I would say Esther John is the godmother of Kenyan music.
What about you, Mr. David Amunga?
In Kenya, Esther John was the first lady to put our local market into the picture.
Wonderful.
So we can be able to give her that respect. As he says, she teamed up with Mzee Fundi Konde and others, his cousin, and formed a very formidable performing group.
Mr. Osusa, I was wondering if you had anything to add on to the record labels, some of the big record labels that ended up setting base in Nairobi.
I think what I really want to say that there's something we have not gotten from Mzee properly. You asked him about producers, so can we maybe go back to that a bit? And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think among the first producers, I believe, was Peter Colmo. And then after that, there was Charles Warrod. I'm talking about the major, Peter Colmo with the Jambo Records. And then Charles Warrod with the Equator Sound. So apart from those two, who were the other producers or who came after them?
Thank you very much. The first producer here was Jambo Records. I would say that the first label was Jambo,
right,
followed by African Gramophone Stores.
Okay, AGS.
AGS.
Yeah.
And then
who's running AGS?
Asians. And then CMS, who recorded Isaiah Mwinamo.
Yes.
Mwale was with AGS. Akina John Zenze.
Right.
So I would say that those three, Kericho was your friend Chandrana.
Yeah.
This is how they followed. But I think I followed them. AGS, CMS.
Can we assume that you are the first African
I
producer?
was the first African artist to start production.
What was your label called?
The first label was Mwangaza.
Mwangaza.
Mwangaza, which recorded America to Africa.
So we've had a very interesting conversation, and there's a lot of male names popping up. Zé, perhaps would you have an idea of why a lot of women were not involved musically during the pre-independence era?
Yes, as I told you, those of us who started music and those who started music before us, the picture displayed was that music was a source of drunkards and social misfits.
If you can allow me, Lucy, just to agree with Mzee, then not just even in Kenya or East Africa, but around the world, women's spaces were restricted to the private space. Right. And if there were to be anything, they had to be spaces that are supporting men, you know, nurses, teachers. And so, I mean, being a musician was something that it was within a patriarchal culture that was only for men. And that was, I mean, too much moving into the public space. And as he has rightly said, it was the space where alcohol and all these things of free living. And yet a woman was still constrained on what she could be or even what she could imagine herself. So I'm quite touched about this woman who recorded in India.
Well, thank you so much, Mzee Amunga, for gracing us. And I think I speak for a lot of young people when I say that we have learned a lot today. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I wish there'll be more opportunities for you to share what you have with the young musicians especially, and also maybe lend a voice in a lot of issues happening in the local music industry at the moment. So thank you so much. And we are also very happy that the government is trying to recognize you, because we are aware of many of your peers who have died without getting the recognition and the support that they deserve, despite the role they played in supporting the local music and of course taking it to the international music scene. So thank you so much as well, Mr. Osusa. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Dr. Njoki, for coming, and we hope we can be able to host you again. Thank you so much, viewer, for staying with us. To sign us off is the Nairobi City Ensemble playing Malaika, originally by Fadhili Williams. I've been your host, Lucy Ilado.
Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Nami nifanyeje, kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sina we. Ningekuoa malaika,
journey through Shades of Benga continues. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the next episodes. Shades of Benga, the book, is available in all leading bookstores in Kenya. Get your copy for this and other stories in full.
Mambo vipi?